Thanks for tuning in to this video learning, giving the why, the what, and the how concerning using student-friendly proficiency skills instructionally with students. Student-friendly proficiency skills are a way for students to engage in the progression of learning a standard. We will begin with the why in relation to the numerous benefits for students. Then we'll explore what teachers have done to help students better understand what the levels mean on a scale. Finally, we will explore what some examples of student-friendly scales look like and how teachers use different student protocols to bring student-friendly scales into their instruction. Student-friendly scales are a piece of our BPS curricular program. They sit on the right side of our diagram because they may be personalized by buildings and teachers. There is not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to student-friendly scales. Different teachers each support different types of learners, bringing their own art and passion to their student-friendly scales. Student-friendly scales are an integral piece of standards-based learning. Proficiency scales are created using priority standards, becoming a tool teachers can use to plan, instruct, assess, and give feedback. This module will focus on how using student-friendly scales instructionally with students is a powerful way to personalize the learning for students. Research from Dotson, McMillans, and Watkins strongly support the use of student-friendly scales. Their studies reported a 32 percentile gain in student achievement when students had tools to set and track learning goals. Student-friendly scales are a tool that naturally provide many of the aptitudes and experiences we commit to providing all students in our BPS portrait of learning. Student-friendly scales can assist in setting goals, providing avenues for feedback, engaging students in their learning process, as well as increasing opportunities for student reflection and communication. The benefits for students are vast for both teachers and students, but to highlight a few, student-friendly scales offer clarity for students about the what and the why of their learning. They provide students a tool for monitoring their progression of learning and tracking their progress towards goals. Student-friendly scales personalize the learning process and engage students as partners in their learning. And student-friendly scales create individual and authentic paths for students to demonstrate proficiency. Before students receive their first student-friendly proficiency scale, it is helpful to bring meaning to the numbers on the scale by relating it to something they already know, such as riding a bike. In this image, students can relate that a level 1 task is something they need help with, such as a parent needs to help push a trike. A level 4 task, such as popping a wheelie, means a student has moved beyond proficiency and can handle more complex tasks. Here are a couple more examples of how teachers have helped students understand levels on a proficiency scale. The scale on the right connects the levels of eating a great burger, aimed at connecting and hooking learners through their stomach. In these two examples, teachers engage students in the understanding of the levels on a proficiency scale by having them write their own scale outlining the progression of learning using something they personally had to learn to do themselves. You can make an even bigger connection for students if you give them the template that mirrors the template you will use as a teacher. This checklist from Marzano outlines action steps for using proficiency scales in the classroom. It's a great tool for thinking backwards about why we should use student-friendly scales instructionally. For instance, an early teacher action is to post scales so that students can see them and refer to them. A way to know that they are affecting student learning is the student action steps. When a student is asked, can they explain their learning target? When looking at the protocols for using student-friendly scales with students, it is helpful to think of protocols falling into 3 categories. Teachers can engage students with student-friendly scales before, during, and/or after learning. As you begin using student-friendly scales instructionally, just focus on one protocol. As you get more and more comfortable guiding instruction through these scales, you will naturally find yourselves using many different protocols. Protocols for using student-friendly scales with students before learning have the primary goal of helping students clearly understand the purpose and the progression of their learning. Students are provided clarity around learning targets and can track their progression of learning. Here are a few examples of student-friendly scales that could be utilized before learning to set and track goals. Notice how these examples each articulate the progression of learning skills from a 1.0 to a 4.0. Instructionally, these are powerful in helping teachers and students understand where they are at in the progression of this learning. Teachers might use questions related to the level 2 skills as a pre-assessment to gauge where a student is starting at. Here are a few more examples of student-friendly scales that could be used with students at the beginning of instruction. In both examples on the left side, the standard or the level 3 learning target is in the middle and at the top. And the simpler skills, the level 2 skills, are in a progression of number steps around that target. These examples could be used both whole group or individually, where students can check off the steps that they have mastered and then focus on the next learning target. Protocols for using student-friendly scales with students during learning have the primary goal of helping students understand the purpose of their learning and track their progression. Teachers can use scales to demonstrate how assignments and activities build knowledge and skills around a standard. Here are a few examples of using student-friendly scales with students during the learning process. Referring the learning to a student-friendly scale helps to anchor the purpose of learning and where it aligns in the progression. In the image on the right, we see how a teacher has aligned formative questions to different levels of the scale and articulated the learning activities at different levels. Here are a few more examples of student-friendly scales that can be utilized during learning to track progress. Notice the example on blue paper where students adhered the student-friendly scale into their notebook, allowing students to access the scale anytime and personalize it with their own markings. A scale in the hands of students at all times makes for a tool that students can refer back to and individually track the progress of their own learning. Protocols for using student-friendly scales with students after learning in a unit or a lesson help students to reflect on the learning progression. They provide a great tool for conferencing about next steps and celebrating growth. Here are a few examples of how student-friendly scales can be used to reflect on the learning progression after learning. In all these images, you see whole class versions of student-friendly scales that articulate the progression of learning. These images, the reflection of learning is whole class and public. Please note that this method requires the building of a safe learning environment where students feel comfortable publicly sharing their level of understanding with their peers. Here are a few more examples of using student-friendly scales with students after their learning. In the images, you visualize how the student-friendly scales can be a tool to provide reflection and feedback. They provide a natural opportunity to individually celebrate growth and set new learning goals. Using scales instructionally with students is an effective and powerful teaching practice. Like any new learning, remember to start small, reflect, and revise your practice. Using student-friendly scales instructionally with students aligns with Zaretta Hammond's quote from The Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. In that book, she reminds us that learning is not about learning facts and information, but rather helping students learn how they learn.